What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for some more content for you guys, and what we're going to be focusing on today is that James Maddison replacement. We saw obviously at the weekend against Wolves the creative void that has been left with the injury for James Maddison. We know he will be out at the earliest until the new year, January time, and maybe even more than that. So we're going to look at 5 players who can step up in the absence of James Maddison and really fill that creative void. We've picked out these 5 players, and the first one that we're going to look at is looking at the youth, and that is Jamie Donnelly, who's in firing form for the under-21s at the moment. I'll just get the stats up in a minute, but what's your thoughts on Jamie Donnelly?
Yeah, obviously he's very young at the moment. He hasn't quite made his Premier League debut, so whether he's ready to step in a Premier League game remains to be seen. But just got Player of the Month in the for the under-23s in the PL2. Plays in kind of that number 10 position. Has been banging in the goals and assists this season. Has been involved in a few Premier League squads, I think including on the weekend as well. He was involved in the squad, albeit didn't get any minutes. And maybe it could go under the radar that he could be a player potentially who could step in Maddison's absence. Obviously, there's big differences, but whether, I guess the question marks is whether he could play that midfield role off the ball as well as on the ball, albeit apparently he's very good at pressing. That's one of his main attributes as well. So maybe that's a fear that doesn't need to be there. But I think the question is, you know how like Maddison likes to drop deep and help out his midfield and likes to control the game. Is Donnelly kind of able to do that kind of side of the game? But then again, who is? It's a very difficult kind of skill to do. But what we do know is, going forward, getting goal contributions, could Donnelly maybe come in and surprise a few people? Maybe, potentially. But I guess Andrew would have to decide whether he's ready for Premier League action or whether it would be too much of a step up for him.
Yeah, he wasn't taken out of the squad in the under-21s like Ashley Phillips was to be brought in and used as a bench player for the Wolves game. But if you're looking at the stats, he's played 11 games so far in the PL2 and the EFL Cup, 6 goals and 11 assists in 11 games. That is just crazy numbers, to be honest. Yes, it is in under-21 football, but it clearly seems to Zoe that level is a bit too easy for him right now, and he's 18-year-olds, and this is the under-21, so there will be players older than him that are playing against him and playing with him at the same time. So does that suggest anything to you, or is it still a bit too early to tell?
In terms of if it's definitely too early to tell whether he's ready for the Premier League. You only really know that when they start playing. It doesn't matter how well they're doing at this level. Until they get their opportunity, you just don't know how they're going to respond to it. So it's way too early. But clearly those numbers suggest that level is way too easy for him and he needs more of a challenge, because literally every game he's getting goal contributions and usually it's multiple as well. I remember I think it was the Peterborough manager said that he was just causing them so much trouble and it was almost too easy for him at times to cause them damage in the game. So I think, judging by that, he could maybe do with a loan move in January if he's not going to be involved in the first team. At definitely that level, he seems to need more of a challenge at this point, I think.
I look at highlights from him and he really does remind me of Harry Kane, Jamie Donnelly. The way he holds himself, even like run-ups to penalties and stuff like that. And his passing ability is absolutely brilliant. He seems to have modelled his game on Harry Kane. He really has. And I'm seeing a lot of similarities. But, 18 years of age is still a very ripe age. So the question is whether he's ready or not. And yeah, like you correctly said, we won't know that until he's actually given the chance.
Yeah, but it's also about being in midfield. Like maybe if you were talking about him playing up front, where maybe there's less pressure on him to do that kind of defensive side of the game, and he has to track runners and all this kind of thing, maybe there's more of a case for it. But playing in midfield, in a midfield 3 in the Premier League, yes, he might be able to make a bit of an impact going forward, but are the responsibilities going to be too much for him? Who knows?
Well, we have seen players of that age make an impact in the Premier League, yes, in midfield and other areas of the pitch. I mean, look at the age Bukayo Saka was when he broke into the Arsenal team at left back, moved over to the wing. I mean, he was brilliant ever since coming into that Arsenal team. You look at Romeo Lavia last year for Southampton. How old was he? 18, 19 years of age. And
but he's a defensive mid.
Yeah, he is a defensive mid. But I would think it's even harder to be a defensive mid coming in with maybe your stature and stuff like that and being more physical.
No, definitely. But the role Maddison was playing, he was controlling games, He was, coming deep, doing all that kind of stuff, and he was kind of being in the final third. I guess the question is, we don't really need anyone to replace Maddison. We need to come and bring someone in who's going to bring their own thing to it. So maybe Donnelly can do that. But it's just, I guess, a question: will he be a liability off the ball? I guess that's the only question. But that does seem to be one of his main attributes as well. So his pressing. So maybe that is something to consider.
Well, that's Jamie Donnelly. Let's look at number 2, and this one's a more straightforward one with Giovani Lo Celso. We saw him come on and make a little bit of a difference when he came on against Wolves. He was having chances on goal. He was being aggressive off the ball as well, winning the ball back a number of times in the middle of the park. Hasn't been given his chance this season. Had a really bright pre-season, didn't he? With his creative play was really on show in pre-season, and a lot of Spurs fans were getting excited of the prospect of seeing Giovani on a more consistent basis in the first team. The one problem with Giovani, which is always his biggest problem, is keeping him fit for a prolonged amount of time. It always seems like he plays one game, plays 2 games, and then we won't see him again for a long time. And I think that's been the same case for his loan spells that he's had over the past couple of years as well for Villarreal. But I think from what he's shown in pre-season, for what he's shown in the Wolves game, yes, in the Fulham game in the Cup, he was really poor. But I think he deserves a chance, to be honest.
I would like to see him get a run. I think if he's not going to get a run now, then I don't see the point of him even having him here and why we kept him. Because there was interest, wasn't there, in the summer for him from various different clubs, and Spurs kind of resisted the interest and decided to keep him on for at least, I guess, till January, just see how it goes. And he has found opportunities really hard to come by in the first 10 games of the season. And to be honest, apart from the Wolves game, when he has had a chance to come on and provide something, he hasn't really impressed. So that's been disappointing. But the Wolves game, I did see a bit of spark in him. And I think when it comes to any of the midfield choices here, who I think are probably best suited to the role of replacing Maddison right now, I do think he's probably best fit for it. I think I don't think we don't have as much of a creative passer as Lo Celso available. I think his dribbling ability is a bit underrated as well, and I think he can put a foot in. So I don't know about deserves, but I think he should get a run of games, just because in terms of what we need in that role, I think he's the best fit. And I think it's best giving him a go than, again, toiling with what we've seen so far, or what we saw against Wolves, which was a lack of technical and creative passing. And we need someone like Lo Celso to come in and up that technical ability.
I think we know that he's got the quality to do the role. It's just about if he's got enough mentality to come in and grab that chance with both hands, right? And with Giovani, we've seen him do it on a number of occasions when in that little run when he was one of our best players under Jose Mourinho, when we had a lot of injuries. He really stepped up for the team at that moment in time. You've seen him step up for Argentina on a number of occasions, but he is playing with Lionel Messi alongside him. But I think if Jamie Donnelly does come in ahead of Giovani Lo Celso, where will that make Giovani's head at? And surely if that happens, even for one game, if let's say it's for the next game, Giovani gets straight on the phone to his agent being like, look, they're playing an 18-year-old in front of me that's never played a Premier League game. What am I even doing here?
100%. But there does seem a bit of a weird thing. First of all, there's been a few rumours that he's been unhappy with his playing time, which is understandable if true. But obviously, Ange has made a big case, sort of statement about players wanting to be here and him valuing that a lot more, even over the quality of a player, just player really wanting to be here. And there were question marks about that in the summer, about Lo Celso, whether he wanted to be here or not. And a number of occasions, he has chosen other players ahead of Lo Celso when given the opportunity. So there does seem to be a bit of a weird relationship between Ange and Lo Celso right now, even though Ange kind of seemed to push for Lo Celso to stay in the summer. Since the season has started, there has been, I feel something off between them two. I feel like a few times he's had the opportunity to turn to Lo Celso and he hasn't, or even start him, and he's gone a different direction.
I don't know if there's been opportunities to start him, though. Apart from on the weekend, when has there been an opportunity to start him?
When Maddison's maybe not been 100% fit, or even to bring him on off the bench, and he hasn't done it. He's decided to bring other players on it instead of him. I just think, maybe not starting, but I think there's been opportunities to play Lo Celso more, which he hasn't taken. But he did play Lo Celso on the weekend, and he had a bright cameo, so maybe that will lead to more opportunities for him. But I don't know. I just get a sense of something being off between him and Ange.
But you got to remember as well. He started that Fulham game in the cup, and he went off. He went off injured at half time, and that held him back. So you never know if he would have actually played the whole game and actually impacted the game. What could have been after that? I think the injury did hold him back.
Yeah, that is true as well.
So we'll have to see what happens with Giovani, but I do suspect he will be the one to get that shirt next week, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But let's move on to number 3, and that is Bryan Hill, the guy that always seems to be last thought at this football club.
But we put him third.
Exactly. We believe in Bryan Hill. I believe in Bryan Hill anyway. I think he's got really good ability. He came on in the Wolves game, didn't really put in a performance where to say, look, I'm here, I want to start, and I can fill that creative void that Maddison has left. He didn't do that, but I think he has shown in the past that he can be creative. He's got high amount of technical ability. He's an aggressive player as well when he wants to be anyway, because it's weird with Bryan Hill. Sometimes I look at him and being like, yeah, your size don't matter because you're really aggressive and you can put yourself about and you win challenges against players that are much bigger than you physically. But then I saw him on the weekend against Wolves and he just didn't do that. And I felt like he just got pushed off the ball a bit too easily. So it kind of depends what mood he's in the day, pretty much with Bryan Hill. But having said that, I do believe in his quality. I do believe in his talent and I would like to see him given a go. But the question is, where is he going to be stronger out wide or in the middle? I feel like he's probably more of an option on the wing than he is to replace Maddison in the centre.
Well, that's where Ange has used him when he has got the opportunities, definitely been out wide. I can't remember too many times for Tottenham he's played in the centre, but I do remember, I think it was a Conference League game. I believe it was against Passos. I was under Nuno back in the day. I believe that was one of the few occasions we saw Bryan Hill actually playing a midfield 3, and he looked obviously quite good in that game, I remember, but how much can you take away from a Conference League game against, a mid-table Portuguese side, which it was on the day. But he has had a few fleeting appearances in that position, albeit did quite well. And you'd imagine, like, he's a creative player. He isn't scared to put a foot in. Could he do a job in midfield? But I think Ange definitely sees him more of a winger, and considering our lack of options out wide, I definitely think Ange would want him as an option out wide as well. So I think that's probably where we'll see him if he does get opportunities. But I think maybe there is a case to say, put him in the middle. He will definitely be industrious for you. He'll put himself about, and maybe on the ball he could weave a bit. He can use his low center of gravity to spin away from players. I do feel like he's a player who, when he's given a bit more space, especially when he's played in the Premier League, that's when he thrives a bit more. When he first came, he was a player who seemed to really thrive in those tight spaces, but it seems as though in the Premier League, it's just the physicality just is a bit too much for him at the moment, and it's been a constant issue. But maybe it's a case of if he can adapt to that. I guess the problem with him is he's never had a proper run of games. So it's so hard to judge him. Like we keep saying, he's not right for the Premier League. But like, when's he ever started like 1 or 2 games or 3 games in a row? When he did do it, he seemed to be improving back in January last season. Yeah, and that was the only time we really saw him, like maybe even start consecutive games in the Premier League.
That's why as well that I don't really buy what you're saying about we don't see him being that kind of player for the Premier League, and he doesn't look. What you said before, I can't remember the exact words you were saying before, but I feel like
I said he hasn't shown to be ready for the Premier League.
Which I don't think he's had the opportunities to show he's ready for the Premier League. So it's a bit harsh to say that for him, in my opinion, where he's had 2 sub appearances this season, which is, you can't really go on that in a sample size. The last time he proper started a game, he looked good in that Crystal Palace game just before we let him go on loan. So I don't know. I think it's a bit harsh to say that he hasn't shown that he's ready for the Premier League, because he hasn't had the opportunities to show he's ready for the Premier League.
He hasn't. I'd agree. I do agree with that. I think since he's come to Tottenham, he hasn't had a consistent run of games ever, really, apart from a little run last January where he did pretty well. But what I would say is when he has had opportunities to come off the bench and do something, more often than not he's flattered to deceive, I would say. But it's not to say every time he has, because sometimes he has come on and looked quite good. I remember against Frankfurt in the Champions League last season, he had a couple of cameos in both games where he looked really bright. And
won a penalty, didn't he?
Won a penalty at home. I remember the away game as well. He came on and did really well. So he has had a few occasions, but again, that's Champions League, not Premier League. I would say more often than not in the Premier League itself, he's looked a bit out of his depth, but I would say it hasn't happened every time. So it's hard. It is harsh to judge him, because I'd like to see him have a run of games and then we can really look at him and say, okay, is he ever going to work at this level or not? But at this point in time, I can only judge him on what I've seen him. And what I've seen him is more often than not, he has flattered to deceive at this level. But it's not to say he has done that every time.
But in the last 2 seasons, you can't even count on 2 hands how many cameos he's had. It's like such a short sample size. Like last season, 4 cameos before he got taken off on his loan spell. And this season, he's had 2. And you're talking about literally this season minutes instead of like 10s and 20s of minutes.
I know, it's
so
harsh.
It is very harsh. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it when Spurs fans being like, oh, he's no good. He's rubbish. He's too weak for the Premier League and all this stuff. Like, what are you going on? There's nothing to go on here. So how can you judge a player so like definitively at this stage? You can't.
You can't judge it definitively. You can just judge it on what you've seen.
Yeah. But I'm hearing Spurs fans being like, oh, just get rid of him now. He's never going to do anything special. Like, how do you know that?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I would like to see him get an opportunity. It feels like he won't get it until we get an injury or so.
Well, we've got them now.
Yeah, definitely.
Another player that we're going to look at, number 4, is going to be Dejan Kulusevski, who's, look, obviously having a good season at the moment on the right-hand side. But this actually could open the opportunity for Bryan Hill, Dejan Kulusevski. If he moves into the middle, which I think he can thrive at, and we saw that in the Sheffield United game, one of his better performances of the season, where he was at his creative best, obviously got the winner in the last minute. And I feel like if he could move into the middle and become like that hub of the team, which I really think he can be on and off the ball, move Bryan Hill over to maybe the left wing and then move Brendan Johnson over to the right wing, I think that could work.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an opportunity there to try something a bit different, and maybe you get a different dynamic in the team, because if you do that, all of a sudden you've got 2 wingers out wide who like to go on the outside, and instead of inverting all the time and cutting inside, they're going on the outside and maybe providing a bit more width for the team, which maybe Ange would like the sound of, because a lot of the time he does like players playing on their stronger foot on the outside sometimes. And Decky, I think when he has played inside in the central, obviously I don't think he started a game inside ever for Tottenham, but he has sometimes played there on occasion when we need to change things up. I think he's looked pretty decent there. The Sheffield United game, he looked quite good. I can't remember too many other times this season he's done it.
I think that's the only time this season.
Might have been the only time, because I'm trying to think of other times we've been chasing the game and needed to do it. I think that might be the only time. But I think given his attributes, he's very strong. I think he's one of the hardest workers in the team. I think he's very good at ball retention as well. So is there any reason, and I think obviously he's a decent dribbler. I think he would be able to hold on to the ball in tight spaces in central midfield, which we want to as well. So is there any reason why that can't work playing him in the centre? I can't think of too many. I think when it comes to him being creative in and around the penalty box, I think he could thrive being in central area as well. Maybe he could get into more shooting positions as well. So I think it's definitely something worth thinking about. But so the only question is, you put Bryan Hill or you put Brendan on the right, on the wing. Is that better than having Kulu there and a different player in the centre? That's something for Ange to decide. But I really think profile-wise, I don't see why Kulu couldn't do a job there. I don't think he's perfect for it, but I don't see why he can't do a job in centre. I really don't.
I completely agree. I think I actually think it could unearth something more in Dejan Kulusevski on a consistent basis if we were to move him into the centre. And as well, the stuff we were talking about before with the way Maddison likes to track back, win the ball, kind of be everywhere on the pitch and impact, all different phases of the game. I think Decky can do that. I really do.
And he's definitely played number 10 for Parma back in the day, so it's not like a position.
Talking a long time ago now, though.
It's a while ago, but it's not a position that's alien to him. I think he would get used to it pretty quickly.
Yeah. And there was a manager, was it Conte, that said it, that he could be a number 10? I can't remember who it was. Conte, wasn't it?
Conte said he could play there sometime. I think he played there once or twice under Conte, but very rarely.
Yeah. And last but not least, we're going to talk about the returning Uruguayan Rodrigo Bentancur, who's come on with 2 impressive cameos so far, been called up to the Uruguay squad, so we'll keep a close eye on him in a big game against Argentina as well. But it's an interesting one, Bentancur, because obviously I actually think Bentancur is our best midfielder at the football club. I really believe that. I think that he adds a lot to the team in both attacking phases and defensive phases, but I'm not sure if he's creative enough to take on the James Maddison burden that he's going to leave. I kind of feel like if we were to play a midfield 3 of Bentancur, Bissouma and Sarr, I'm not sure if there's enough creativity in there, but I would like to see that midfield potentially in like the game away against Man City, when we're still going to be missing out two defenders, and it will give us a lot of defensive solidity, but also it will give us stuff going forward, just not as much as if James Maddison was there.
Yeah, I think creative passing, I definitely think you have a case there in terms of could he fill that void. What I would say is maybe he can make up for it in other aspects, because if you remember last season, the way he was playing for his injury, he was really starting to up his goal contributions. And I think he ended the season before his injury with, I think, 5 goals and 5 assists, or 5 goals and 4 assists. And especially before the World Cup, he was pretty consistently getting goal contributions. He got a double, I remember, against Leeds. He was getting a few assists as well, and he was starting to get a few more like really good creative through balls. And what was really great, obviously the best thing about him, was his ability to be press resistant, turn on the ball, beat players, and drive into space, which was super impressive. So could he do that maybe in an attacking position, maybe, and could he be our most offensive player and actually make late runs into the box and provide a different kind of goal threat? Potentially, especially if he's got even protection with Basuma and Sarr behind him, give him a bit more license to go forward, which he didn't even have last season because he was only one of a double pivot and he had a lot of defensive responsibility. Maybe given more license to go forward, he can provide a bit of threat when it comes to the opposition's goal. I agree with you, though. I don't see him being a part, like if he's up against a deep block, do I see him being that player to pick the lock and create chances consistently for this team? Maybe not. But I definitely see him in a game, for example, like Man City, or even other teams who'd like to attack us. If he's given open space and like on when how Spurs like to manufacture those kind of counter-attacking opportunities, even when we have possession, I think he'd be very good at that. And I think if you play him in space and he's charging into space and he's in on the back four, I think he can create chances. But I think the difference between him and Maddison is Maddison's a lot cuter in and around the penalty box when he's up against a low block and he moves around a little more looking for the space. Bentancur is not that offensively minded, but I do think he can provide something offensively if given the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that, and you saw that last year with the goal contributions that he became a bit of a clutch player for us, didn't he? Before he got injured, he was scoring last minute winners and really impacting games week in, week out, and probably the best form of his career, Rodrigo Bentancur, just before he got injured. We saw what he provided at the World Cup, how good he was there, but I do feel he operates better deeper in the pitch in the central areas for sure. But I would say that if we did start that midfield of Bentancur, Sarr and Basuma, it could give us a lot of unpredictability where no one can really predict who's going to be the furthest one forward, the deepest one back. They could all interchange throughout the game and be like really unpredictable. Yeah,
and I would say it would definitely give us a bit more than I think putting Højbjerg in there, because I think Højbjerg is just very different to Bentancur. A lot of the time when he's being pressed, he rushes his pass. He can be a bit sloppy. I think Bentancur is a lot better at ball retention and bit better with his vision as well, with his passing. He's a bit more precise. So I think it would give us a bit more than maybe what we saw on Saturday, in my opinion.
So now that's all said and done, we've given the 5 options. Not what you think's going to see, but what would you want to see in the next game against Aston Villa? Out of these 5 options, which option would you go for?
I think against Villa, I'd go for Lo Celso. I think I'd go for Gio. I'd start him. I'll give him an opportunity to play in his preferred role with a position we know we've seen him play for Argentina to good effect. And I think if I'm looking for a candidate who's perfect to fill in for Maddison while he's injured, I just think if you're not going to pick Gio now, when are you? And if we believe that there is a good player in Gio, I think now's the time. So I'd play him.
Yeah, I'm a bit undecided between Giovani, or Decky, because I really like the idea of Decky inside, and I do think he can do a better job than Gio there in that position, but it just does worry me about having Hill and Brennan on the wings, because it's something that we haven't seen before and we don't know if they can do it on a consistent basis. But I really would like to give it a go, to be honest. Maybe a cup game would have been the best opportunity to try it, but obviously we didn't. So I would just about side with Gio. We're keeping Decky on the right, but I wouldn't mind seeing Decky coming inside and Brian Hill on the wing as well. But look, that is the 5 options that we've presented for you guys. If you have any other options that we haven't thought about, put that in the comment section below. But if it is out of the 5 options, which option would you go for? Let us know in the comment section below. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.